thank you so much to everyone's efforts in putting this together. Our presenters today, I'm super excited for you to meet them if you haven't met them already. They are people that are so kind in that when I send an email or make a phone call, the answer is always yes. And I'm just so grateful to them and their efforts in helping to move things forward for children. And just one more big thank you to Todd for all of his efforts in graphics, and just, this is way better than I ever could have dreamed of. So, okay, Todd. Oh, Twitter, yeah, just join us on Twitter too. Let's promote this, but okay, next one. I'm gonna keep rolling, I'm sorry, we're on a timeline. Part 2, July 14th, I'm super excited. We have Principal L joining us as a keynote. He's going to help us find hope in this time of unrest and talk with educators on how to talk with students about racism. And I could not be more excited for this. Y'all, he is a dream. So please, 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 please join us July 14th. Make sure you're registered for that session and listen to him. I think based on the meeting I just had with him the other day, I couldn't ask for a better person to be a part of this series and to help all of our team just across the state and across the country. So everyone is welcome. Tell your friends. I would love for this to be more of a national webinar series or web conference than just a state of Wisconsin one. So definitely tell your people and your friends, and let's blow that one up in a good way. And then part 3 on August 11th. Thank you. I decided it might be a good idea to give educators an opportunity to get together in kind of a roundtable style and talk about what does the start of the year look like. These are conversations that have been happening already, and I know that there are a lot of questions, and I just think one of the things that I absolutely love about ISN and Teacher-Powered Network is that it has always been a safe place for honest conversations. And so I'm really hoping that on August 11th, teachers especially across the state of Wisconsin, have an opportunity to get together and talk about what are you doing and how are you handling whatever comes our way. You know, things are changing by the daily. We obviously learned in March that things can change within hours. And I think it would be a great opportunity for everyone to kind of get together and have some brainstorming, thinking conversations. So again, please join us for that, be a part of it, be inspired, use your fellow colleagues across the state as sounding boards and ideas, and just really work together to make the best start that can be in this opportunity of change and unrest that we have going on right now. So as we get into it, just a big reminder, we've got the national conference for ISN this coming April 2021. Principal L will be the keynote there. So if you love listening to what he has to say on July 14th, highly recommend you come join us again in April. And I know many of you are big ISN goers and fans, and we can't thank you enough for your support of the organization and continued support. A network is really strong when people get involved and continue to build a community with each other, and so just continue to get involved in conferences like this. And the Teacher Powered Conference is going to be virtual this year. We were hoping to do something in person, but it's just with the coronavirus, we just don't know. So we've decided to take this opportunity to open it up to maybe even some more people. And so the Teacher Powered Odyssey, Rethinking Power in Education, highly encourage those of you that are on this call to get involved in the Teacher Powered Schools Network if you're not already. Learn more about what teacher-powered schools are, how they work, and then rethink education on so many different levels. So again, lots of exciting things coming up. We'll keep going here. Okay, so today we're gonna take some time to celebrate. So we've got 6 amazing teachers from Wisconsin that are going to share ways that they found success in a time when the rug was absolutely ripped out from underneath them and from all of you. The goal is to really celebrate things that are happening. So they are going to have this fast-paced, hard-hitting presentation. So hopefully you'll get lots of ideas. And if you have questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat. But I have asked our presenters to ignore the chat while they're presenting so they can keep pace with their presentation. And then we will have some time for questions at the end. And then at the very end of all of this, I would like to break up into a middle school and high school cohort and an elementary cohort. And again, more think tank style. You can ask questions of our presenters or share ideas of things that you found success with. Maybe something really resonated with you during any of these presentations and you want to share with others. And we welcome that and welcome that community. Next slide, please. Thank you. Perfect. So if you check in online, you will be emailed a certificate of attendance for coming. So this is a professional development day and time. So again, give yourself permission to really dig into this hour and a half worth of togetherness so that it is meaningful and that you get something out of it. That will help inspire you and empower you to continue, like not only feel really good about what you are doing, but then be inspired to do other things or try something new. And the other thing we want to remind you of is we are always looking for feedback and welcome feedback of any kind. So feel free to, at the end of the session, fill out the feedback form on our ChangED site and make sure that we can make these opportunities better for all of you as we go on. So at this time, I want to talk about just a couple meeting norms. And I know it's really easy and convenient for everyone to turn their cameras off during these meetings. I would love and appreciate, and I know our presenters would too, if you would actually leave your camera on. Because then we feel like we're together. And this day is all about building community. And it's hard to do with a black screen in your name. So if you would all do me a favor and turn on your cameras, I don't care if your kids are coming in the background or you're doing other things, but let's just be together in this day and have a great time together. Most of you I see have muted your microphones, which is great. Thank you so much for doing that. When you are not talking, if you could remain muted, that would be amazing. If you do have questions, there is this reaction button at the bottom where I think, is that where you raise your hand or something? Or maybe there's a different spot. I don't know. You guys know more than I do. But feel free to raise your hand or utilize that chat box again. If you have questions, I also would encourage you as presenters are presenting, if you want to type in some feedback or comments or things, feel free to do so in the chat box. You can do that privately to them or you can send it to the group. Whatever you're comfortable with. Again, they will ignore you during their presentation, but they will very much appreciate any comments and things that you might have for them when they are all done and they have some time to process through all of that. So, any questions before we get started, or Todd, did I miss anything?
No, you didn't, but I did. I don't have the check-in link in ChangED yet in the session, but I'm putting it in right now. So in about 1 minute, there'll be the check-in link when you click on ChangED and click on part 1. So
sure.
Otherwise you can use that tiny URL that was there.
Okay.
I'll put that. I'll put
Dana,
that.
I see your comment about turning off, and I get it. If you are in a spot where you have horrible internet and the only way it works is for cameras to be off, that's totally fine. Make it work for you however you can. But I also know that as a presenter, it's really awkward to just be looking at names. So for those of you that have great internet and can be a part of the day, we really, really, really appreciate it. So any other questions from the group or comments or things? Awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of this. We've got 42 people that are logged in. This is awesome. I'm excited. And to kick us off for the day, we have Zainab Belbaki, and she is going to instill her wisdom upon us. So thank you, Zainab, for being here, and thank you everyone for joining, and take it away, my dear.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Hi, I'm Zainab, Zainab Becky. I am actually, I'm a former teacher at Escuela Verde, but I'll be able to talk a little bit about some things that we did at Escuela Verde. I see we have still some current staff from EV, so they can also provide some insight as well. I'm also a teacher-powered ambassador. So again, similar with Liz with that. So Liz gave us like 10 questions and told us we have 10 minutes. So it's like a minute per question. So it's boom, 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 boom. So to kind of just jump into it a little bit, to give you a little bit of context of who I am, where I come from, some context of the school that I worked with. So the school that I worked at is called Escuela Verde, translates to the Green School. It is located in Milwaukee. It is a high school, public to our charter. We are chartered by the City of Milwaukee Common Council. We do have about 120 students, and we have staff. We have about like 12, 13 staff members, which we have advisors. So in contrast to your traditional teachers, we operate as a collective, which is part of our teacher-powered values that we have. We do operate under all 15 teacher valued aspects. So we get to decide a lot of decisions for the school, all the decisions for the school. So you'll see that as a common theme, being a teacher-powered school, as to how we were able to address and modify and change given the pandemic and this unique situation, because the teachers held the power, or the advisors held the power, and we got to dictate in which direction we wanted to go. Of course, working with the constraints of the state regulations. A little bit of background again about the school. It is on the south side of Milwaukee, so it is a predominantly Latino school. We have about 87% Latinos. It is a full Title I school, so we do have low-income students, and it is in an urban setting. Another thing that distincts EV a little bit too, that I think will be important to note as we answer how we adjusted during the pandemic, is that it is a project-based school. So that means, if you're not familiar with that, kind of in contrast to traditional school where you sit in a classroom, you face the teacher, and you sit there the whole year and you get your 1 credit in social studies. Whereas in project-based school, the student will work wherever they want to learn and create a project and earn credit in that to meet their 1 credit requirement in whatever field. And it doesn't have to be in that 1 year. It could be spread out in 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, until they meet their graduation requirement. So we're project-based. We are a teacher-powered school, operated as a collective. And then we also have a unique curricular framework that is based around social justice, restorative justice, and ecology. So there's a little bit of background of the school as well over there. So some of the things that I want to address with the questions is like, what methods did we use when we had, so we have some guiding questions. The methods that we originally used, again, with a project-based learning, the students are really in control of their learning. And it is heavy one-on-one student advisor ratio connection. And when the pandemic started to affect how schooling was done, we were able to capitalize on our flexibility being a project-based school. And also being a teacher-powered school, that we got to decide what we wanted to do. So there was a first week that was before our last quarter. We kind of gathered, decided what we wanted to do. We would make the students, or we thought that the students would have the best input of having their last week in Q3 kind of being online. This was before we knew that we had to change it for the whole fourth quarter. But we had the flexibility to even do that 1 week and make that virtual learning, because in our mindset as EV, learning can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to happen in the constraints of the 4 walls. So we were kind of already flexible with that. So that transition from it being just the final week in third quarter to full fourth quarter being virtual was wasn't so hard for the students. The transition that was difficult was probably more the technological aspect of it, rather than the students truly understanding that they can learn wherever. Like they didn't have to unlearn that they can learn from their home versus from they can learn from their school. So I think that is a very distinct difference that made EV be able to capitalize on the unique school structure to be flexible. Another thing too is how do we reach the students during distance learning? We had a lot of one-on-one communication with students. So advisors did it through calls, text messaging. I use a lot of Remind app. If a tangible takeaway is an app that I use a lot. You can create a classroom, so you can text your students. You can also add your parents on there. And the reason why I really like it is there's anonymity, so you can not use your personal phone number. And you can create it for your whole school. So then once the student is in, they can have it for all the other staff in the school that also sign into this program. They also did a really cool update where you can now add Google Classroom and all these other applications in there. So in terms of virtual learning, I would highly recommend using that as well. But the staff did a lot of one-on-one communication. We contacted the parents quite often. They were sent out, there were calls made, emails made, letters sent. And then we also provided the students with an all-school advisory. We definitely used Google Classroom quite often in our distance learning. Everything was on Google Classroom, and we created one for our entire school called an all-school advisory, where they would find kind of like announcements so that they still had a sense of an all-school like meeting that we typically have, which we call like a town hall or all-school advisory. Another thing that we did during this crisis, which I think is really at the crux of everything, is we kind of shifted from, okay, what a school is, and people think school academics, right? But being that we are different and we have these different core values compared to traditional school, we were able to kind of go to the root cause during this pandemic and really focus on the student and their family. So we quickly went to, okay, what are the needs that the students have? So we had food and internet as major needs for our students. So one thing that we were able to do was provide food for the students. They could come into the school during designated time and pick up lunch that was made. Then over time, we also, because we are a collective, teacher powered, we realized that, okay, well, we got some comments from students saying, you know, the lunches were kind of the same thing over again. So we were able to partner with a local business, a local Latino-owned business, to provide $50 gift card, one per family, so that they could get some essential foods. Because I mean, a lot of people in education will say, okay, let's reference Maslow, hierarchy of needs. You have to have your sense of security and, and food complete before you can start any learning. So that's where we started. So the students were able to get food. Their families came by the school, picked up their gift card, their voucher. And that we were also then able to touch base, contact, do quick little check-in wellness checks with the family member or student, whoever came by to pick up the food items or vouchers. But even the fact that we were able to adjust and meet our students' needs was a reflection of this teacher-powered notion. Another way too that we were able to meet the students' needs too was with internet. So a lot of our students don't have computers or internet. And if we're expecting students to do things digitally, it would be unjust to have these expectations when they don't have the resources. So at EV, we do have a 1-to-1 student laptop ratio. So in that first week of Q4, myself and another advisor were at school the whole day so that students could pick up their laptop and then they would have laptop available for them to do their work. And we did ask parents if they needed internet, then we did provide a hotspot and paid a monthly bill for that hotspot. Again, that was decided on as a collective, and we had some reserves, so we get to decide what we want to do with the funds that we have available. So in order for us to really adjust and have the students be successful during this transition, you have to care about the student first, and then go on to, okay, now let's start learning, discussing, reflecting. So that was a key difference, I think, in how we responded. Another thing too is how parents responded. I think what we were doing with the parents was sending messages on a regular basis. We did calls, we did newsletters, and we did emails. And we were very transparent, saying we really don't, here's what we have. We'll keep you posted with what we know. And the parents were very understanding in understanding that they're kind of learning with us. So we didn't know if quarter four would be virtual or not. We didn't know if 2020-2021 school year would be virtual or not. So they were very understanding with us, because we were constantly sharing with them whether or not we had the answers. So they knew that once we did have some guidance and expectations of what to do moving forward, they would be notified. In terms of what we would use again for
be quick, Zainab. You have like 30
I know, I looked at the time. In terms of what we would use again and what kind of framed it, we kept a spreadsheet and we reflected on, okay, what was going well with the Google Classroom, what was going well with communicating with parents, what was going well with, or what was a challenge with communicating with students, and then with work. And that will be used to guide the process moving forward for the next school year. And then I guess I'll just end with really, I think what makes EV is during this whole pandemic, what made us be able to be flexible is that we were able to remember to look at the whole person. And in doing that, then you can address everything else, because kind of like what's going on right now, if you kind of just, if you address maybe a side effect of this systemic racism, you're not going to address the systemic racism. So you have to address the actual root issue. And I feel like that's what we were doing with EV. We were addressing the needs of the students, and then we were able to see higher communication, engagement, because we cared for the person first, then we can focus on learning. And I think that's what's going to be essential moving forward.
Yeah, that's really
what I wanted to highlight.
Super powerful. Thank you so much for sharing. If you have questions for Zainab, again, feel free to message her in the chat. It looked like there were some thank yous for the Remind app recommendation, and it's definitely something my kids in elementary school, their teachers use that as well. So any like big question for Zainab before we move on? Okay, awesome. So Kristen, take it away. Thank you, Zainab, for sharing.
All right, so I am Kristen Hampton, and I'm here to share some little tidbits about things that worked for me during distance learning and things that I did in my classroom. This past spring, I teach 5th grade in the Waiwega-Fremont School District, which is a small rural district in central Wisconsin. And our district serves about 860 students in grades 4K through 12. So this is a picture of my own 2 kids, and this is their first week of at-home learning. And they're happily working away on their work from their teachers. And then as time went on, things changed a little bit, and my son here decided to give himself a haircut during one of our Zoom meetings. And then my daughter's body language pretty much tells it all. So I guess I understand this from a parent perspective and a teacher perspective, that distance learning can be a little bit difficult. A little bit of background about our school and like what we were asked to do. We were asked to prep work for 3 weeks at a time for our students. And we assigned packet work to be done at home because many of our students don't have internet access or devices. Up until this morning, we did not have one-on-one devices with our students, but we just found out today that we're going that way in the fall, so that's super exciting. But our work returns and pickups were scheduled every 3 weeks at the elementary, and the parents came and did a work exchange during a 2-day period. So it allowed for a pickup of work and return the work that they had done. And the teachers didn't really have any set expectations as far as how to teach during this time. So I have always been using Class Dojo to communicate with families and parents. And I would post examples and different tips and things from my students at first when this closure first happened. And after about a week of this going on, I just realized I missed the face-to-face interaction so much with my students that so I took it upon myself to figure out how to use Zoom at that time and connect with families, and the parents were pretty appreciative of that. So I had the majority of my class showing up every day, and we met for probably an hour and a half a day and just kind of worked on math or reading or writing or whatever they needed help with. So our meetings were pretty productive. This is just a little example of a weekly plan that my students were given a copy of each week. It's organized by day of the week and then subjects, so students knew what had to be done each day to keep pace with our class, and it was flexible. So if they weren't able to complete everything on Monday, they could do it Tuesday. They just kind of had that 3-week drop-off date in mind, but this kind of just helped keep pace, and I had good feedback from parents about laying it out by day for them, so they could help their child keep pace as well. And then we did a lot of fun things just to try to keep kids engaged during our Zoom meetings. And one of my favorites, well, we did show and tell. So it was fun to see a different side of my students' lives, I guess. I got to meet a lot of pets, and we took tours of their bedrooms and got to see their car collections on the walls. And one boy always zoomed in from his tractor. So it was fun to see my kids in a different light. We told jokes on Zoom. We did little scavenger hunts. We did close-up pictures, and they had to try to guess what the item was. And we just tried to make a lot of fun out of it. And then our district did put together some various challenges to keep students engaged. So we did like a virtual spirit week. We had a reading challenge that went on, and kids could earn prizes if they posted their pictures to our district social media sites. Our district did a little cooking contest they broke it down by grade. They did a pet contest where kids could vote on their favorite pet pictures. And then within my classroom on my Zoom lessons, we began a research paper prior to the closure. So we continued writing our research paper, and we broke it down and did baby steps and learned how to write our papers one section at a time. And the kids produced some pretty awesome work. Just being that they didn't have a ton of experience with ever having to go online and go virtual with some of this, their work was pretty impressive. So, and then we took their research a step further, and we had them do state slideshows. So when they finished their slideshow, they were able to share it with me, and then I could pull it up and share it on our Zoom meetings, and they could talk through the slides with their class, which they felt was pretty cool. We did a novel study with the book Fever. If you've ever read it, you know that there's so many parallels to the current happenings in our world today. So I've done this novel for several years, but it was our discussions were especially very relevant to the times, very enriching and fun to discuss with them. And we did virtual Mother's Day wishes for our moms and our grandmas out there. We wrote poetry together, which the kids would type and submit to me via Google Docs, and then I turned their poems into little bookmarks that I included in their end of the year packets. A fun adventure this year was to do based off of the Flat Stanley books. I'm sure many of you have heard of Flat Stanley, but we did the Adventures with Flat Mrs. Hampton, and so I created my character on Bitmoji and sent it to all my students, and then got to go on a variety of fun adventures around their homes. I visited a student's cabin. I painted nails with a student, snuggled with a student's dog, got to celebrate a birthday with one of my students. So it was neat to feel connected to their lives, and I always looked forward to when they would send me pictures of what adventure I was going on next. We wrote letters to our future selves, which they submitted through Google Docs to me. Our students and parents had the opportunity to ask questions about middle school this year, which the last several months of school for fifth grader, we spend doing a lot of prep work for middle school. But obviously that couldn't happen as normal this year. So I wanted to make sure parents had the chance to ask their questions and feel comfortable with the transition, to kind of put them at ease a little bit. So they had an opportunity to do that, and then we addressed those questions together in our Zoom meetings. We wrote class compliments about our classmates, which is something I've done always at the end of the year, but it was neat to try it in a virtual context, where they could handwrite it and take a picture and send it to me, or type it and send it to me. I found the quality of their compliments actually to be a lot deeper and a lot more thoughtful doing it online versus sitting together in a circle and having them do it. They actually put the thought into and weren't swayed by their peers around them and just copying what the next person wrote down. So this might be something I continue online in the future. But then I took their compliments and compiled them into a little sheet for them so that they can read all the nice things that their classmates had to say about them. And then I'm sure you've seen some of these different time capsules floating around the internet, but my class really took a liking to the Who Was, What Was book series this year. And we had a lot of discussions about how we're living through history right now. And one of my students wondered, will they ever make a book called What Was the Coronavirus? And we just talked a lot about the history that they are a part of. And so I sent them the time capsule to try to complete. It was an optional assignment, but many of them did it. And I hoped that someday, it talked about like things, how they're spending their time during this closure, what's hard for them, what do they miss the most. So I hope that someday they can look back on that and see how their time was spent during their at-home hours. And then another idea that I ran out of time to get to, but would be fun to try, goes along the lines of the I Survived book series, but kind of doing our own writing project about surviving the coronavirus. So something I might keep in mind for the future. We did a fifth grade virtual kind of drive-through graduation. Instead of doing it in our normal performing arts center and doing a big ceremony, we had a drive-through at the community park, and we had a pretty good turnout. We were able to give our kids their awards and their t-shirts, and the best part about this, I think, for us teachers was to actually get to say goodbye to them in person and for the summer. So it was kind of a good closure. And then often throughout the course of the closure, I sought out feedback from parents, either through Google Forms or just some informal feedback from Class Dojo posts where I'd ask them to just drop an emoji of how they're feeling that their kids are doing. But it allowed me to gauge where my students were at, and I could adjust accordingly if things weren't going as well as I thought. And then finally with grading, our district adjusted how we graded students at the end of the year, which I'm sure most of yours did. Our students could pass with distinction, pass with evidence, or pass with no evidence. And since all of our students were on track to pass fifth grade prior to this closure, all of the students still passed. It just depended how they passed. So if they went above and beyond, then they would have passed with distinction. If they did the required work and kept up with the pace of our class, they passed with evidence. And then those couple that didn't complete enough or didn't turn in certain assignments, there really wasn't a way to assess if their skills improved. So then they passed without evidence. So 51 days, we made it. Everything went well, all things considered. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. That was awesome. It looks like we have a really good question here. So how does online school work for other ADD students? I'm wondering if we should maybe keep that to the end though, because I feel like that's a really good conversation for more people. And so we'll come back to that, Colleen, but I think at this point we'll have Rebecca and Mel from MG21 share their presentation. And then those of you that maybe have ideas or comments or whatever, feel free to add to the chat if you have any experience. How will students transition when passed with no evidence? That's a good question, Allie. We can come back to that one too, because I think that applies to a lot of kids. It doesn't matter the grade level. Okay, so Rebecca and Mel, welcome. Take it away.
All right. Hi, I'm Rebecca Fox-Blair. I'm the Executive Director of MG21 Liberal Arts Charter School. We are a small public charter school. We're a PBL school for Monona Grove. We serve students grades 6 through 12. And typically our students, kind of our demographics, right now we're about 75 students and 9 teachers. We have about 30% of our students have an IEP or a 504. About 20% of our students are students of color. About 50% of our students are free and reduced lunch. Most of our students kind of chose our school because of the smaller educational community, their desire to do project-based learning and kind of drive their own education, or the aspect that we're really a relationship-based school. And so that opportunity to have the more personal one-to-one relationships with staff and peers. Our curriculum incorporates kind of a thematically integrated curriculum, project-based learning, restorative practices, and service. We've been a school for 10 years. This year was probably one of our most challenging years because we added a middle campus. So we've been 9 through 12, and this year we added grades 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And you know, I realize now, you know, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. And we were very unprepared for what this expansion would look like. Luckily, we were very fortunate to have 2 really strong, amazing middle campus teachers that we hired that kind of worked their butts off, worked through all of this and create community.
So on March 13th, hold on. On March 13th, we gathered for an impromptu staff meeting because we had an inkling that school was going to close for a couple of weeks. Geez. Oh, just, okay, I got this.
Sorry, we're trying to stick to the 20 seconds per slide. So we're working hard on this.
Technology, right? Okay, so on March 13th, we met as a staff and we talked about what school could look like in the next 2 weeks in case it closed. And that afternoon, we prepared students with some virtual tools that we wanted to make sure they were familiar with, just in case we weren't back in person. And we had them log into Zoom, Google Meet, vocabulary.com. And of course, students wanted to meet. So they chose a 2 p.m. for their meeting time. And we started to meet because that next Monday schools were closed. And the first thing that we did was name one of the students' pet leopard geckos duct tape. So the last picture was my co-teacher Alex continuing her read aloud with her advisory. And what we also did was we recruited a student to help us start a Discord server where we could connect with students socially and they could connect with each other. And we saw students build new relationships with each other. We saw deeper friendships. We were able to connect with students and get to know them better. And it was a really cool way to share time with each other. Since we're throughout virtual school, we knew that relationships, we wanted those to be front and center. We wanted to be able to connect with students and as a staff. So here we are in one of our first staff meetings where we started with a question about like what books people are reading. Oh, you're muted.
We also found out very quickly that parent support was a huge thing that we needed to address. There was a lot of feedback and concerns from parents We have a partnership with the YWCA, so we worked with them and our school social worker, Jessie Frayne, and they developed a series of weekly parent support meetings where initially it was divided by upper campus, middle campus, and they brought all the parents together. And they basically kind of shared a highlight from the week, a challenge they were facing. They had a discussion question they focused on, and then they kind of had open discussion. And it was very popular and very well received, and something we plan to continue. When we thought about how do we take our curriculum online, we also use Google Classroom, and we use the tools that we had available. So we use Zoom and Screencastify and a number of things to be able to try to bring our curriculum to life, make it manageable for students, so students would kind of do it, everything would be posted on Sunday. It was kind of asynchronous. They could kind of do it at their choosing.
And at the middle campus, we knew since virtual learning was new to all of us, it would be vital to help students stay organized. So Alex and I came up with a schedule for the week for students that we shared on Sunday, and then all of their work would be due on Friday. And we saw a huge boost in students' time management skills, their reflection skills, and also their work production. Throughout virtual school, our students were also able to continue their PBL projects as a choice. And here, one student is presenting his National History Day project on the Battle of Bunker Hill, which was a Lego stop motion version of the Battle of Bunker Hill. Some other projects that students completed were a project on exercise and mud kitchen. The class that I was teaching during this time is called You Are What You Eat. And I wanted students to be able to work in the kitchen and think about what they eat, maybe practice some cooking so that they weren't always working online. So I created my own cooking show called Mel Cooks to show them how to cook some of their favorite recipes. And here's one student making lemon pound cake from my first episode. Students also made pizza, crepes, and I dropped off ingredients at everyone's house so that they could all make macaroni and cheese. So it was really cool to see students' engagement in these projects and see them develop cooking skills and confidence about like knowing what they could choose to eat.
So as many of you experienced, some students kind of rose to the level of online teaching and project-based learning and kind of took it and ran with it, and other students really struggled. And so to try to help students engage and kind of come up with meaningful projects, one of our co-teachers, Jean Delcourt, came up with this idea of a do-it-yourself garden bed. And so he made a video, posted on YouTube, asked students if they wanted to, participate in the project, and then dropped off the cut wood, dirt, seeds, and everything at every student's house that was interested in participating in this project. And so it was really cool to see students and their families build these garden beds, plant their seeds, and participate in this. I think it was a really great opportunity. We also had opportunity to participate in some virtual events like the Young Playwrights Festival. One of our students, William Costello, did a play that was performed. It's a partnership with the Children's Theater of Madison, and that was really amazing and really a great experience. And we had participated last year in a collaborative project. One of our teachers, Ian Lowe, and Maureen McCullum with Wisconsin Public Radio had done a storytelling project called Classroom Frequencies. And this year, she did a follow-up interview with some of the students who were seniors. And it was really great to see them kind of sharing their experiences about graduating in the middle of a global pandemic. So those were some ways where we tried to really connect with students.
Outdoor ed is another really important component of what we do. And even though school grounds were closed to staff and students, some of us snuck on to the grounds to install our new bees into our hive, to weed the garden, and to put some things in the ground that we could enjoy in the fall when school is hopefully back in session. So Another thing that we did was we wanted to find a way to celebrate and say goodbye to our first group of 8th graders. So we decided to drop small gifts at their house every week in May. And a side effect of this that I loved so much was I got to see students and their families in person, connect with them, catch up, and it felt really good to see them. We ended with our first graduation. We know how important this ritual is to 8th graders and their families, so we wanted to find ways to make it special. We had a 10-minute slideshow to start, and we chose songs for the slideshow. Students chose their own songs that they wanted to hear in the slideshow. And then we gave them a final gift during graduation, which is this mug with photos on it, and they opened it during the graduation.
We also struggled to try to figure out how to make graduation meaningful. Being in Dane County, we originally thought we would do kind of a drive-in movie style graduation. We were super excited to do that. And then we were told, no, you can't have students on school grounds. You cannot do that. That's a hard no. So we ended up trying to do the same kinds of things. So we had weekly gifts for our seniors. Mel, can you go back a slide? We had weekly gifts for our seniors. We did the graduation signs, you know, we tried to make sure that we were having some kind of connection with the students and that they felt like this was really a special, momentous time, because there was so much initial like disappointment that they felt about not being able to kind of have their last trimester of senior year, not being able to be together, not being able to do that graduation rites of passage. So when we finally created what our graduation would look like, we did kind of a combination of Zoom. This is Paul Marks, and he's one of our teachers. And we tried to really incorporate, we did a live Zoom with the staff and the students and the graduates all together, and then it was broadcast on YouTube. But we tried to make it fun and funny. And so we did our regular graduation, but we incorporated, you know, Paul and Jess did kind of a singing poem. And we tried to kind of incorporate as many kind of fun, good things together. And the biggest challenge for us was every year our students give a graduation speech, and trying to get seniors to record these graduation speeches on their own and get them to us in a timely fashion was quite a challenge. But we were successful, and I think overall, I think the kids and the parents felt really good about how the graduation turned out, and you know, felt like it was a really positive end to you know, very difficult time. And so I guess what I would end with is just saying that, like, for us, we did a similar thing. We had kind of a final kind of conversation spreadsheet about, you know, our thoughts about what really worked well, what were some of the challenges that we faced. I think the biggest takeaway for us is that we really considered what if we don't return to school as usual? What could that look like for us? One of the biggest, I think, takeaways was the fact that we did have the opportunity to kind of connect and collaborate as a staff, and to really start taking our kind of shared leadership model to a new 9-person staff. It worked great when it was 3 of us, but when it's 9 of us, we had to really make some changes and have some conversations. I think the other thing was being able to really connect personally one-to-one with students. We did that same combination of one-to-one meetings, advisory meetings, town hall meetings, but being able to have, you know, a half an hour uninterrupted conversation with a kid was amazing. I mean, it was something that in the regular school doesn't always happen, because something's happened, there's a crisis, somebody's got a question, you know, there's a million things that are occurring. And so that was a really kind of a good aspect for us, and to figure out how, when we do return in person, do we maintain those things that we found to be really important.
Thank you. That was amazing. I love all of the different things you dropped off at the houses. That's super cool. Good for you guys, and congratulations on making those connections during a time when it is so hard to connect with families. So I didn't see any big questions pop up in the chat, so if people have questions, feel free to add, but I think we'll just keep rolling with this. I love all the ideas. So Allie Stone, I'm going to introduce you next. And if you could share with us what you were able to do during crisis teaching.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you can hear me okay? You know me. Okay, good.
Yeah, I was muted, yes.
Okay. I was like, oh no. All good. You guys, this is incredible. I just have to say this. I have like 2 pages of notes. These are all like fantastic things. So I'm only going to sprinkle a little bit more that's already been shared. So as Liz, and thank you Liz and Todd, this is fun, this is exciting, I'm happy to be here. But I am an advisor at OSC, which is just outside of Madison, serving grades 3, 4, and 5 in a multi-age setting with 80 students for advisors. We are a teacher-led school, so much like some of the other speakers have shared as well. And we have project time every day is built into our schedule. And something that I want to stress and share with all of you is that our kids have one-to-one technology. We were just able to do that in those planning stages of our public charter school. And so they're very familiar with technology. And this might lead into the final webinar, but just as an encouragement to think about what could you be doing now, and I'll go through and talk about that more, what we did at the beginning of the year that led to some of those successes that we had at the end while we were all in virtual learning. So this is our school, and I'll share kind of the people. 2012 we opened our doors. And so almost 10 years of being in existence, always been multi-age, always grades 3, 4, and 5, always having technology in the hands of those students. And obviously we're a PBL school. I put this here and you can see all the boxes and all of the things. And the takeaway for this is, and I've heard some other speakers were mentioning too, I even wrote it in my notes, that we have learned to be flexible. There has, out of our almost 10 years of existence, there's only 1 year where we haven't had any change. Like maybe the minor stuff here and there, but only 1 year. That means we've changed buildings. This was our original building where we went, then we went to another school, we modeled in that other school, we were sent back to this school. I mean, we've had to pivot often. Like that's just part of well, actually it's one of the sayings that we say in OSC. We always tell the kids, what are we in OSC? And then they shout back at us, flexible. So I think with that, take some comfort, but also just giving yourself some of that grace too. But yeah, so that's why I put this in here, because I think it's important to know that we've had lots of time to practice being flexible. And it does take practice. But I also wanted to share just some other things too with our school. So like I mentioned, grades 3, 4, and 5, 80 kids total, project-based. We embrace students learning. They take ownership of their learning. We believe in student voice and choice. Even with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, we rely heavily on being a community. And so the beginning of the year, we always kind of lay that groundwork. Again, and I'm going to tie it back to our successes that we had, but just to give another frame of reference. So who makes up OSC as far as the adults, us crazy group of people? And we have, I don't know if I have a push point. This is Taylor. She is our educational assistant. We're very fortunate, something that I think that makes OSC unique. And again, maybe this is something you can think about as you move on. Nikki is our RTI assistant. She helps provide different interventions, and we pay her through our fundraising. Carrie, up with her cute little dog there, she is our special ed assistant. Mr. Unrest, Cody Unrest, he's our special ed, and then you've got the 4 of us down here. So myself, and Chris McNeil, and Grace Shira, and Carly Zick. So myself, Chris, and Grace, we're all co-founders of OSC. Carly jumped in. We had some maternity and paternity leave our first year of existence. And she jumped right in full force, full throttle, and then a little bit of change happened, and so she's been with us. And as we move forward, we're also feeling another change in the sense that Chris McNeil is moving on to other things. So what methods did you try? This is really hard for me too, by the way. Like, I feel like I'm speed talking, so I'm sorry. I want to get it all in. So what methods did we try face-to-face? Our mode of transportation of how we deliver instruction beyond the face-to-face is through Google Classroom. We've tried other resources. We've found that this vehicle, so to speak, is what really sets our age group up really, really well. Now, I am a mom of 4. I had to do that balancing act of being a teacher, of being a parent teacher, of being a parent, of being all these different things. And just to plug in, if there are people here today that have younger kids, my kids actually use Seesaw. That was a really good, easy thing for us. So I just want to put a plug in there because maybe that's something that others don't know about, or maybe you do know about. But Seesaw was really manageable as far as a parent perspective. And then for back to OSC for us, it was all about Google Classroom. So much so that we take that first quarter and we go through everything. So much so that you just like want to pull your hair out. But this set us up to have that easy pivot that we all had to do in the springtime of jumping into online learning. So I feel like some of the groundwork that we've done happened prior to, and as you're planning, that might be something to be thinking about. But yeah, so it looked like this. We still had our, we use curriculums like supplemental curriculum with EDU typing, extra math, Khan Academy, iReady learning, both math and reading. Let's see, Moby Max. So like the kids are exposed, Spelling City, that's another one. The students are exposed to a lot of different online programs. And then by no means would I would say we were utilizing Google Classroom to its fullest potential until we were kind of put in that position this spring of really understanding how we can engage students. And as you can see, like on the class comments, we had more kids commenting back and forth. That was a success for us, and students better utilizing the tool that we have in place. And so these are just some of those successes. We had book groups. We used Epic for our book groups, and that was, while we tried to do it as much as we possibly could of what we're doing if we were all together face to face, we said, no, we got to keep like pushing forward with this. And for our kiddos, this by far was something super exciting that they absolutely loved. And so they all would, based off of iReady scores and data that we know about the kids already, we got them into book groups. And this I think was also really helpful with parents, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But so you can see like this fifth grader up here, she's holding the computer. I'll just do the pointer here. Right here, she's a 5th grader. She finished PON. We always celebrate when they finish their particular grade. This group of kiddos right here, they were just having a good time on Google Meet talking about their book. And then these two over here, something that kind of came out of this from the parents' perspective, from the parents, was one group of students decided that they wanted to start their own book club, and that's them meeting virtually as well. So reaching students. A lot of people already mentioned between Zoom and ours was Google Meet, since everything is with Google Classroom. But part of our OSC culture is to have what we call tribe groups and mentor groups. And we found that, so like for example, these 3 right here, they are a mentor group. So I've got my 5th grader, my 4th grader, and my 3rd grader. Same up here, 5th, 3rd, and 4th. And then I've got a tribe group working over here. Those because there's only 4 like main advisors. those for us, we use the kids to hold each other accountable. We rely heavily on our mentorship, and we rely heavily on specifically the fifth graders because they're now in that leadership role, to be able to help with the password document that we started at the beginning of the year, that how to log in successfully. If they have a question, where do they need to go? And so as a result, we had a lot of Google Meets. We had where we're saying, hey, you're meeting with your mentor, you gotta check in with them, or hey, I'm gonna pair you guys up through an email, check in with each other. And something to go along with that as well was similar to, I'm sorry, I can't remember who, but I also heard like we gave the assignments by Monday. We would say, here's what you have to have accomplished. It's no different than what we normally do. So students were used to that of the week. And then on Friday, we have a Friday check-in that we are looking for, have you at least been engaged at least once? That was kind of the stance that our district took on what means engagement. But on top of that, we absolutely love to have fun. And so I don't know if anybody else experienced this, but like the whole etiquette of how you talk in a Google Meet, like we were getting tours of bedrooms and all the things, and they were like bouncing all around and all that kind of stuff. And that was something that as us as the advisors, and we would meet twice weekly through a virtual meet, we were just like, oh, okay, like I'm getting really dizzy from this, like whatever. So we addressed it in a fun way. That was pretty exciting. We also, this picture right here was a collaboration with our primary school. And that was just, we saw that engagement was low. And so we decided we just need to, again, go back to the basic needs, have some fun, re-engage the student body. And so we had a scavenger challenge kind of day where the kids had to, if they wanted to, had to participate in this challenge, and then they would go around and show evidence. Again, they could upload that to Google Classroom, or they could share it with the principal who would share it on social media, those types of things. And then as far as being a project-based school, something that we traditionally always did, and we had our fifth graders lead that, was our chick group. So we raise chicks. And this fine young individual right here is actually an OSC alumni. And she approached us and asked, hey, I know you guys do this chick group. Could I do it for you? Kind of a thing. And so she got her own Google Classroom. All the kids joined that classroom. She went and did these recordings and taught all about the chicks and the lifespan of the egg, from the egg to it actually hatching, the 30-day incubation there. So that was pretty cool. Also, something that we also know, again, thinking about like basic needs too, is the kids kept like we would just kind of read between the lines, and the students were just like, I really miss my friends. I really want to talk to my friends. And while they can do that through their own technology, through their own phones and stuff, I think they really missed seeing not only their friends, but their tribe groups, their mentor groups. And so listening to their needs and thinking, how can we accommodate this to keep the engagement up? We scheduled in then a friend meet, just a Google friend, like you just meet up with your friends, list 3 friends, we'll make it happen. If you can come at this time, this is when you're gonna go, so that you can chat with whoever it is that you're missing. So that worked out really well as having our EAs really miss the kids too. And so they decided to have a virtual recess. And what that looked like was that anybody that could participate at that time that the EAs were able to run it, and they'd share about some of the books that they were reading, or they would just chit chat or whatnot. And so we had 2 adults doing that as well. How am I on time, Liz? Am I running out?
Yeah, you're way over, but that's okay. We're flexible.
Okay, I'll just stop there. So if more people want to hear from me, they can just contact me.
Do you have any other things you want?
I think like I've already talked about this. I think the biggest thing was parents, and parents actually took on projects. Like they created projects with their kids. One last example, the mom and son there, they wanted to do a survey of what was your favorite flavor of Cheez-Its. They did it all. We posted, we helped like create that. We had Google Forms going out constantly. We were in constant communication with families. That's it.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. There was a really good question though about your the groups. Do your mentor groups stay the same?
Yeah, so the mentor groups is made, see, and this gets like a little like tricky because the kids are split up into 20 groups. I'll try to do this super fast. Split up into 20 groups. The advisor, so myself, I will rotate through each homeroom. So by the end of the school year, I will have taught all 80 kids. And then that mentor group is made up of 3 kids in that homeroom, typically a 5th grade, a 4th grade, and a 3rd grade. And then our tribe group is actually made up from 1 kiddo from each homeroom. So it's not that they're like constantly always together. We've got more options and opportunity to work out challenges or, you know, like get along and all those things. So hopefully that answered your question.
That's awesome.
I'm done. Sorry.
You're totally fine. I loved that you talked about accountability too, and how it wasn't always on the teachers, and how you had students that were accountable to each other. And the fact that you had your alumni student helping to run some of that, because let's be real, online teaching can be exhausting. So the more you can get the students involved, the better. So kudos to you and your group for putting that together.
Yeah.
And then whoever invented those homeroom names with the Visor Turtles, the Watermelon Weirdos, that's awesome
Every
too.
year. Every year.
Perfect.
All right, I'm done. I'll get off.
All right, well, thank you, Allie. Appreciate you and your time. And our final speaker for the day is Jake Fields from Wildlands.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot. Let's just keep drinking from the fire hose.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I'm running a script today, which isn't super like me, but I come from a long legacy professionally of people who like to talk too much. So we're hoping that the script really puts a damper on the amount of words. So I'm sharing my screen right now. Hopefully it's coming up. How we doing? Are we looking good?
Looking great.
Great. So thanks everybody. So I'll tell you a little bit about Wildlands School before I tell you a little bit about myself. So for anyone that isn't familiar with Wildlands, we're a 7th grade through 12th grade project-based teacher-powered charter school located just outside of Eau Claire, Wisconsin in the Augusta district. Our school's on over 400 acres of wilderness reserve, and we're an experiential and outdoor adventure learning focus. We serve about 75 students each year and have a number of the teacher-powered autonomies built into our charter contract, our board's mission and vision, and our staff teaching culture. A little bit about me. My name is Jake Fields. I'm currently the lead teacher at Wildlands. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education, and I did my master's work at UW La Crosse in adventure-based experiential learning. I taught in Madison and Houston, Texas, and have a deep history in wilderness therapy for at-risk youth. My passions are like firmly in the outdoor adventure arena and in making deep and impactful positive relationships with students and their families. So that's a little bit about me. I don't know how your brains all work, but my brains tend to connect things to outdoor adventure programming. And spring at Wildlands School is really a magic time. Our students are usually rounding the corner on their final leg of their core content stuff and looking forward with excitement to our spring river trips. In so many different ways, when the middle of March hit this year, it suddenly felt like our canoe was pinned on one of those real day wrecker rocks that you get into sometimes on a river. Just deep enough below the surface to not see it coming, but big and jagged enough that it's not going to work well to pretend like it's not there. And kind of suddenly, the Wildlands family found itself like squarely on one of those day wrecker rocks. And in a matter of first days and then hours, we were told to bail. So we bailed. And in a matter of 36 hours or so, our school went from a normal, completely off-site model to completely normal to an off-site model, sorry. And as students and staff, we all felt like we'd just been launched out of the boat and into the cold water. However, a really big part of our outdoor adventure program and the resiliency curriculum that we implement with our kids is to talk to our students about the fact that ultimately the accountability for success and happiness lies in each individual. And that if you're not actively working to improve your situation, then you dang sure better not be complaining about your situation. So as a staff, as a community, as a family, it was time to catch our breath, accept where we were, and get to work. So the adaptations, the responses, the evolution of our program really focused on three different like principles or organizing features. The first was to provide floors but not ceilings. It was critical for us that all students had the support they needed underneath them to be able to succeed despite the less than ideal circumstances, but that we not be inadvertently putting ceilings on them. The second is that relationships come first and relationships stay the foremost. We built our school on this pretty radical notion that by treating students more like humans and less like measurable widgets inside a data set, you could create a really rich community. And it was important that we do that even off-site. And then the third was to mine for silver linings. And our school has always been comfortable with risk taking and familiar with the like progress that often lies underneath something that could be seen as a failure. So as a staff, we leaned into the notion that profound change holds pretty inherent opportunities for growth as well. So a little bit about each of these three focus areas quickly. When we talk about providing floors but not ceilings, the like first way we began this experiment in crisis teaching was we knew we were going to have to cover some details and logistics. Like other people have said today, as a rural district, reliable internet is a moving target for many of our families. And with help from our district, we got everybody a mobile hotspot that needed one. We also knew we were going to have to find a way to formally and transparently communicate plans to our students and families. So student forums, parent forums, a lot of Zooming. And then we also started to keep track of who was being contacted when. And that's what you see down there in the high school student contact tracker. So that some of those higher risk families that are harder to consistently communicate with weren't slipping through the cracks. The next way that we supported our families and students with a floor was by presenting our programming and learning opportunities buffet style, if you will. So each week families received a big diverse menu of options that they could choose from. And there was a focus or a challenge for each week that we would compete in or meet to share at the end of the week. What's kind of notable here is our staff felt strongly that our schedule was not going to include huge page requirements or packet deadlines, and we decided right away as our staff to be active about programming authentic student-centered activities and to avoid inundating our students and families with a ream and a half of paper every week that they needed to decode. So some of the activities that I'm talking about included things like a recurring installment of kitchen science complete with exploding eggs and how to make the lightest, fluffiest muffins, some creative writing opportunities, which allowed students to find comfortable, cozy spaces to check in for some focused creativity, and just a gamut of other menu-based options. So the second of those three guiding focuses, really that relationships first and relationships foremost. It's important to remember that during all the menu-based options that were happening, they were happening within the context of students and family relationships staying on center stage. one of the one of the ways that we were able to do that, one of the ways we've always related to students at Wildlands is to get down onto their level and meet them where they're at, and we do that through games. Stress challenge and team building and trust building curriculum we've used for as long as we've been a school, and so there was a little bit of a creative challenge, but to do it off-site. We use this game Scribble all the time. Scribble is like an online modality for Pictionary. And you can have up to 12 players. They can be drawing and guessing at the same time. And if you play it while you're also on Zoom, it's dang near as good as sitting around the lunch table. And like, who really knows why our kiddos are the way they are, but for whatever reason, Wildlands kids love playing cards together, and they specifically love games like Spades and Hearts and Euchre and 500. And so we ended up playing a ton of cards with our kids. This is another one that gives you a nice platform where you can be in your own private space, but also be sharing with each other. Again, if you've got Zoom alongside it, it's almost as good as just playing cards together at the lunch table. In addition, we just planned stuff on our schedule that was truly just for fun. So on that menu that we would send out each week, you would see things like sports talk or fishing and hunting stories, cool history mysteries, or just like high interest level presentations about things like volcanoes or things that students are just interested in because they're fun. And it's important, ultimately at Wildlands, we're not cultivating these deep relationships and connections with our students just for fun, although we sure have a lot of fun making them. But ultimately, we're making investments into a relational bank account that needs to be like full up on resources for the hard conversations. Because of the way we scheduled our days and weeks with students, there was a lot of opportunity for students to connect with us when they were just having a crappy day. So maybe it was a sibling that was driving them nuts. Maybe they had a sick relative they couldn't see. Maybe they'd been in their basement for 16 days without sunlight and had run out of new Netflix content days ago. Or maybe they didn't realize that kind of slowly that day in and day out meh feeling was starting to feel an awful lot like depression, and they needed an outlet. The point is, not only while working from home, but at all times at Wildlands, our staff is working to build and maintain with our students and families this flush account of relational trust, so that when the going gets tough, there's a big, deep supply of that trust to use and to draw from. So the third and the final major focus for us as a staff, again, was this idea of mining for silver linings. It was a commitment to actively mine for those silver linings that exist in pretty much every single crappy situation. And surprisingly enough, when we started to dig for them, both as a staff and as a student body, we started to find that there were silver linings all over this new kind of difficult landscape. The first silver lining we found kind of was in the tendency that I think a lot of us have to define the way forward sometimes based on the path behind us. I think even the most progressive and evolving programs sometimes fall into that mode of reproducing past successes and eventually losing that feeling of kind of having your toes just out there on the edge, on that cutting edge, and that attitude that kind of likely helped us to those successes in the first place. So when literally everything was changed so suddenly, our staff found a renewed sense of problem solving, and that like think tank vibe of the staff came back, and we were suddenly bouncing ideas off each other with renewed vigor and taking chances in student programming and focusing not only implementing past success, but in dreaming and developing for future success as well. Both at the high school and the middle school level, some silver linings presented themselves in the form of students having the opportunity to do projects that they might not have had the time to really truly immerse themselves in while they were within the confines of the school day. These are two pictures of a student who was able to spend tons and tons of time building single track mountain bike trails and then also riding them. And the same thing here, we have a student here that because of the flexibility of working from home, was able to spend tons of time with her father, finding an old scrapyard motorcycle gas tank, and totally refurbishing it, spray painting it, making a really, really professional looking finished product. And ultimately finding silver linings in the way that we celebrated the successes of our students. So it certainly wasn't the graduation ceremony that our students thought they were going to have, as many people already talked about. But our graduation ceremony was completely student produced. There was a funny, cheeky little layer to it that students got to decide what their diploma was going to be. And I would hand them a copy virtually through the screen of "Oh, the Places You'll Go" by Dr. Seuss while they received their own version of a diploma. So you can see it varied all the way from a basketball to a trophy to someone's favorite trail coffee cup that they use while on trail. So again, finding that silver lining in a way that allowed students voice and choice, independence, and made it their own experience. So I'm going to hop off here and kind of put a bow on this, but obviously I'm going to go back to this slide one more time and just say that for Wildlands, it was important to start here. And as the year ended and looking into next year, it was also important that we reconnect and that we start looking into next year from this place as well. And kind of the last thing I'll say is that as educators, as we look into an uncertain school year next year, if you're able to provide those floors, if you start with relationships and you let the spotlight shine on those relationships, and if you're active about looking for those silver linings where they almost always exist within difficult circumstances, I think it's the platform that we all need moving forward to plan a great school year coming up. So that's kind of all I have, and hopefully my timeline wasn't too brutal, but thanks everybody.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate your time and efforts and sharing and everything. And, looking at the clock, everybody, we are reaching noon. We want to be super respectful of everyone's time. So really quickly, I want to do some reminders, and then I'm willing to stay if people wanted to answer some questions and whatnot. But if you got to go, we totally understand. One more reminder, please check in today so that you can get your certificate of attendance. Don't forget about the ISM conference coming up. The teacher-powered conference, please register for those. Get your teams involved, especially virtually. I think we're finding that we can definitely accomplish lots of things virtually. And then please, please, please sign up and register. I know it'll be very worth your time for part 2 and part 3 of this webinar series. I think one of the things I am most proud of is that we have made this free to educators, and people need a place to communicate with each other and to learn from each other, and again, feel safe and connected. And so I can't thank you all enough for being a part of today, and I hope that it continues into July when we have Principal L speak with us. That will definitely be incredibly powerful and moving, so please join in for that. And then part 3, if you have ideas, we're still building this. Remember, this was an idea from 2.5 weeks ago. But if you have ideas in terms of how we can make that August 11th part meaningful, we would love to hear it. So either put it into feedback, put something into the chat. You can email myself or Todd. We are happy to accommodate whatever your needs are. These things only work when you get out of it what you need to get out of it. So again, thank you for today. Todd, is there any other last minute announcement thing that I had missed?
I think you rocked it, Liz.
Okay, awesome. And then just again, one more time, huge round of applause for all of our presenters today. And a big thank you to Teacher Powered Schools and ISN for helping put this on, especially Todd. Thank you for being the brains behind this.
Good team. We're a good team.
Okay, and then we'll go back to, there were 2 questions that were asked that I want to hit up again, and I think anybody is welcome to join in here. Definitely students with special needs is something that that is talked about a lot, and how do you reach them, especially during a virtual setting. And so there was a question asked about students with ADD, but I would open this up to any special needs students. I know that that's a big topic of conversation. Has anybody had success in reaching those students, or had opportunities that they were able to connect with students and families on a different level that maybe wasn't talked about today? Just jump in.
We had to be really flexible and really think outside the box. And, you know, we had students that initially like didn't connect and weren't accessing the materials. And so trying to track those kids down, meet with them and their families, figure out what was the barrier that was keeping them from connecting, and then really thinking creatively, how can I meet with that student? How can I engage that student? So we had, because we're small, we have the luxury of being able to pivot a little bit, but we really had to think outside the box for those.
I think another thing to note too would be to, it might be a fallacy to assume that students with ADD or some additional needs won't be successful in distance learning. I feel like some of our students who were quite successful were some of our students who had special needs. So that's another thing, just because the environment is changing. So if the environment is changing and the expectation is changing, so then the outcome could also change. I think is something to know. Another thing that we did too is we also had meetings virtually with the student to check in if they needed it. So we did check-ins, and we also had office hours for our, I work at a high school, so it is a little different than elementary, but we had office hours for those classrooms, and I would shoulder tap and send emails to students who would say, hey, you should definitely be in this reading office hours. Those are some things that we did.
I agree with Zainab. I noticed at the middle school level at MG21, some of the students who weren't experiencing a lot of success during the year really hit their work out of the park when they were at home. They did an awesome job. We also worked one-on-one with students. We had a one-on-one weekly meeting, and then we had some support staff working with students just to help them stay connected to their work. But I think for a lot of our special needs students, being at home and learning was easy. It seemed easier for them. They seemed to do more work.
And I can only echo too at the elementary level as well. I think a lot of our, special ed students did find a ton of success. And not only that, but our, in collaboration with our special ed resource teacher as well. He was really great about having consistent meetings every Monday night at 6 o'clock. And that's where he found the most engagement. And for us, in the way that we viewed it, because there's quite a diverse with the students and what their needs are, if they at least engaged in that part, we considered that we're meeting their needs versus maybe, yes, they did or didn't do this specific task, but they came and they were engaged, and it was a way for us to look at the basic needs. So.
Anybody else? If you were a presenter and you want something, or you have something you'd like to share, feel free. Okay, the last question I just want to make sure we have time for. Kristen, this came up during your presentation about students transitioning when they're passed without evidence. And if I'm not, Allie, I think you asked this question, so maybe you can elaborate on it a little bit.
Yeah, I was just curious because our district took the stance of kind of what I had mentioned too. If there was at least one engagement, like they posted something, they shared something, they attended something, that was considered engagement, and therefore we kind of did like the pass-fail kind of a thing. And then we also looked at what they had accomplished during third quarter. So I was just curious. I like how your school kind of broke it up. But then how does that translate to next year for those 5th graders? I guess, I was just curious.
Well, I only had one student out of my class who really didn't do anything. And I guess in his defense, like, he didn't have access to any type of device to use. And both of his parents were working full time. And I don't think he has any older siblings or anything. So he was kind of left on his own and not really like a self-motivator to get anything done. Academically, he does very well. He's a pretty bright kid, but you know, in the classroom, it's easier to keep tabs on those kids and keep them working and keep them going. So he was set up to pass and he was doing just fine in the classroom. But then, you know, I think our district took the stance of like, we can't really fault them for not having access to the materials that they need or the support that they might need. So that's why they just said they're passing. You don't have evidence of that, but they're passing. And then, you know, like in 6th grade, their teachers will meet them where they're at and they'll adjust accordingly and go from there.
Oh, thank you.
Any other last minute questions from our group that are still kind of hanging out here? This is awesome. Thanks for staying on.
I
Go
think,
ahead.
oh, did someone else?
Go ahead, Beth.
I just had a question for Allie about the mentor groups and the tribe groups. So I know this is just like a detailed question, but so you have a group of like a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th grader. I love that idea. We've kind of bounced that around at MG21. My question is, what if a student leaves the school when they're in 4th grade? Do you just roll those 2 new students into a group?
Yeah,
a different group?
And that we had a student, just to speak specifically to that, we had a student that actually was moving overseas in the beginning, kind of after 1st quarter. But then we have a wait list and another student came in, so just filled that spot. And then the other thing is each year it's a different mentor group. So it's not a three, because our homerooms change. So we really try to set up. And I think maybe does that answer what you were kind of asking?
Yeah, and I guess I'm kind of interested about your homerooms changing and why you make that decision versus having the same homeroom every year. That's really interesting to me.
Do you want me to answer that now? Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay, so I'll try to do it quickly. I'm trying to get better at this.
Okay.
So just based off of experience from our 1st year that we opened, we actually did not rotate. We were going to keep the same homeroom for the 3 years that we had them. But we found that it didn't lend itself to the community that we have now. Partially maybe because of physical space, but and not only that, but with perhaps some of the classes being a little bit heavier with higher needs. Perhaps that might have been my classroom, that it was like, we wanted everybody to be able to find somebody that they could connect to. So therefore, we claim that we're this community and this is a way that we can fulfill what we envision the OSC community looking like. And not only that, but I mean, maybe some of us have been in a situation, or at least I know I have, where maybe I haven't gotten along in my schooling with a teacher, and to have that for 3 years could have been, I think, really difficult. And so every year, and not only that, but we mix the kids up in their homerooms too. Or we noticed that these 2 kids were building a really positive relationship. They needed that. Maybe we put them in the homeroom for their 2nd year. Or maybe these 2 kids are too close and they need to expand a little bit. And so then we would switch them. But we have a really big open space. We're not in classrooms. That also lends itself to being able to mingle, so to speak. But that's kind of the vibe we have and that we wanted to create. And then our tribe groups, because there's 2 groups that we have. Our tribe groups is where then we get to really mix up 1 kid from each homeroom. And it just depends. We might have, if we're doing community building, we might then do the tribe groups. sometimes we're really intentional with the tribe groups, knowing that these two kids don't get along. So they need to problem solve. They need to, you know, sit down and have those hard conversations with guidance, obviously with us. Again, we're talking 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, but and then the mentor groups really are there for like the logistical. We do a Friday check-in, so we assign all of the work on Monday, and then on Friday, the mentor, and I should say throughout the week, the mentor goes in and checks on the mentees and says, okay, have you gotten this done? Show me this. Did you make sure that you uploaded it? It's just having those accountability partners and cheerleaders, really, just to root you along. And then the new students have somebody they can go to beyond us as the adults and lean on each other. So those are the difference between the two.
I love your thinking, and I just love that the idea of the different groups. And like I said, it was our first year of our middle school this year, and we were trying to figure out like how these groups could look. And now that we're going to be in our 2nd year in the fall, maybe we can implement some of these ideas. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no, it works really well. We actually, that came from a summer saunters program that we had started in Lodi too, and we wanted to carry that over. So that was, you know, grades 3 through 12. So those that go out hiking or out in, you know, different areas and doing different things. Ice Age Trail is in Lodi, so we do a lot of work with them. That kind of came from that. And then we just saw how great that could be and wanted to mimic it in our school. So yeah, try it. If you need anything, let me know too. Happy to help.
I will be contacting.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for staying on and being a part of this day. This was incredibly successful and hopefully empowering and inspiring for those of you as you know, think about the things that you did well to end your year, and then also thinking about looking forward to how to start a successful 2020 school year with all this unknown business. So anyway, I just can't say how much I appreciate all of you and being a part of this and making this amazing. But I do really want to be successful, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, respectful of your time. And so the fact that we've already gone almost 15 minutes over, I really appreciate it. I love the community that this brings. But I think we'll sign off and then look forward to seeing you all, yes, on July 14th. That will be amazing. And then just encourage all of you to reach out and connect with each other throughout all of this. So Mel and Allie, you definitely have some more conversations, I think, to happen. So don't be shy. I think that's another really cool thing about this network, is that everyone is always willing to help each other out, because we are in this together, and it helps when you've got people that you can utilize as sounding boards and work together. So thank you again. Thank you, Todd, for running everything.
Thank you, Liz, for talking all the time.
Yeah. No, this is my
Thanks for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm excited about it. So we'll see you in July, and make sure you sign up for August, and have a great day.
It's great to see everyone.
It's hot in Wisconsin, so take care. Drink lots of water.
Bye. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.